Welcome, everyone. I'm Dick Deming. I'm Medical Director of Mercy One Cancer Center and the founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. Welcome to our weekly cancer education series. It's brought to you in part by a grant from the Iowa Oncology Society. And our topic tonight is social work, and we've got a great social worker as our guest. Welcome, Kelli. Kelli
Hello.
Bredehoeft, social worker at the Mercy One Richard Deming Cancer Center. Welcome.
Hello, I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. And before we start talking about the role of social work in cancer care, let's just get to know you a little bit. Where were you born, Kelli?
I was born in Waterloo, Iowa, but originally born and raised, grown up in LaPorte City, which is just south of Waterloo.
Okay, so LaPorte City for like high school?
Union was the actual community, it was the school district. Yep.
Okay. And how many in your high school class?
I think there was like 93 or 97, so fairly small.
Pretty. And what was your claim to fame in high school?
I was a runner, so I ran cross country and track. And so we won the first state championship for cross country as a team while I was in high school. So pretty exciting.
Awesome. That's a
Yeah.
great claim to fame.
Yeah.
Pardon me. So what did you do the year you graduated from high school?
Oh my, I worked after I graduated. And then in August, I went up to Buena Vista University and started my my college degree in psychology.
And Buena Vista and Storm Lake, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And what was your interest? I mean, what did you learn or experiences did you have in high school that led you to start work in sociology in college?
Yeah, so really, I'd always been very interested in helping people, and we had a career program, college, or I shouldn't say career, it was a career class, I guess, in high school that really led me to really recognize. I mean, I kind of knew that I really wanted to work with people and help people, but ultimately, that career class really made me recognize, okay, this is really the field that you need to pursue and really look into. So that sociology classes and the psychology degree is really what I pursued.
And as you came out with a bachelor's in sociology and psychology, what was your first job out of college?
I worked at Glenwood Resource Center for the state of Iowa. So I worked with the most vulnerable population there. Many of them had trachs and vents, many mental health problems. And at that point, I was just kind of waiting to get into UNI as the master's program. So I worked with several different populations at Glenwood. So, yeah.
And then you went to UNI where you obtained a master's.
That is correct. And I was in the 2-year track because I didn't have the social work degree in my undergraduate. So I did the 2-year program at UNI. So the first year typically was the generalist program where you learn kind of everything about social work. And then that second year track then is the kind of where you decide, do you want to do really the therapy micro track, or do you want to do the macro track, which is more administrative?
Mm-hmm. So you have a master's of social work.
That is correct.
So I want you next to explain kind of all the different things social workers do, and I'll throw out there kind of the way I think of it, and encourage you to maybe retrain my brain. So I often think of social workers. I love teachers and I love social workers. So I think of social workers as kind of two main buckets of things they do. One is they help people get connected to services, like they might know a lot more services that patients don't know of, but that they're very good of connecting patients who have needs to services out there that exist and are really good at filling out forms and making phone calls and helping them get that done. So I think of that as one essential service. And then I also, most social workers I know are really good at sitting down one-on-one with patients who have, existential life issues. And I see social workers as wise and smart and being able to do, if you call it that, talk therapy or psychotherapy to help patients feel better about individual issues. So those are kind of the two things, but I don't know clinically what you call those two buckets.
That is correct. And I would call them buckets as well. And it really depends too on which area of social work you're in. There's so many varieties. There's, obviously we're in the medical field, but there's also, school social work. There's a variety of different fields that you could be in. But primarily there are the two buckets that you talk about, are two realms of social work, I guess you could talk about it. But yeah, you have the pragmatic aspects, which is the resources and getting people financial resources, transportation, food assistance, financial assistance, and then you have the other aspect where you're really sitting down and going through those emotional, mental health, counseling resources, and really going through and providing that emotional supportive needs for them. And sometimes you can do both at the same time. Really, as you're going through those mental health supportive needs with them, you might start to open up some of those pragmatic things that they might be needing as well.
And as you became a social worker, got your undergraduate degree and then your master's degree, do different social workers tend to proceed down one avenue or another? Are there social workers that like to just get into the nitty-gritty of connecting patients to services? Are there other social workers that might make their entire occupation the counseling part of social work?
Good question. I think sometimes when you go into your master's program, there's some people that have really no idea what they want to get into, and they kind of, that's part of the practicum process, is just kind of getting your feet wet. Okay, do I want to do therapy? Do I want to go medical? Do I want to do hospice? Do I want to do social work or school social work? And so that's part of the practicum process, and the generalist program is just kind of learning, okay, what things can I do within social work? And then there are other people that go in and they say, yes, absolutely, I know that I want to do therapy, or I know that I want to go into the medical field, and I know that I want to do hospice. And so they go directly into that practicum approach, and they pull a practicum, and that's what they do, and then they go right into that field after they graduate. And so that's what's so great about social work, is there's so many different things that you can do. And I think for the most part, you hear a lot of social workers that once they're into whatever um, route or field they want to go into, that's kind of where they stay. So you see a lot of medical social workers typically stay in that area of expertise. You see a lot of school social workers stay in that expertise. And you don't typically see much overlap. You may see, later on in a career if you want to do something different, but a lot of people typically stay in their field.
Well, let's get a little bit of a feel for your experience as a social worker. What are the various fields that you've worked in before you came to join us at the Cancer Center?
Yeah. So as far as in my master's program, I did two different practicums. My first one was at Allen Hospital in Waterloo, which I think is associated with Mercy, if I'm correct. I believe it
Yes,
is.
it's our
Um,
it's our sister or brother.
yeah, that's what I thought, but it's been so long, I was trying to remember. And so during that practicum, I did medical social work. And so I did inpatient medical, I did OB. I'm trying to think of what else I did. It's primary inpatient, so discharge planning type things. So people that had medical needs and needed to discharge home with home health care or hospice, or really any type of medical equipment that they might have needed. And then the second one I did was with Heartland AA here locally in Johnston. So I did school social work, writing behavior plans for kids. But I really felt the niche to go into medical social work. I really had a lot of, I think with my background of working at Glenwood prior to going into my master's, I really had that, really wanted to do the healthcare. So right after my master's program, I worked in a nursing home here locally. Worked for Fluor Heights for several years, doing really discharge planning on the skilled side and long-term care, which is also where I kind of developed my um, love and desire and passion for geriatrics, long-term care, hospice, palliative care, and just overall terminal chronic illnesses. And then after that, I really made my way into hospice palliative care, as well as veteran care. So I worked at the VA and some community hospice agencies for a period of time, working with chronic and terminal illnesses. And then most recently, I worked at the VA on the oncology floor, was where I've got a little bit more experience with oncology. And then most recently here, working with Dr. Deming with the Cancer Center here.
Yeah, great. How would you define some of the needs of cancer patients? So, what would you say is your role in the cancer center? Some of the various things that you do, and the needs that you see that our cancer patients and their families have that you can be of help with.
Yeah, so I would say the primary role or primary need that I see is the financial aspects of patients that are going through cancer treatment. Financial toxicity is a very high need for patients, no matter what insurance they have, even if they have, primary and secondary insurances. There are still significant financial toxicities when it comes to really food needs, transportation needs, out of pocket needs. Even if we have a primary and secondary insurance, there's still other basic needs and essentials that these families, patients and families have to pay for on a daily, day-to-day basis. So I would say financial. Transportation is an issue getting to and from. A lot of these patients are so ill that they're not able to drive, and so relying on transportation from other people or not even being able to afford transportation is an option. And then I would also say that the counseling, mental health support is a significant need for a lot of our patients here going through cancer treatment, and even the concern for reoccurrence is a concern here.
Right. Getting back to that financial, as you know, medical debt is the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States in terms of private bankruptcy. And you also touched on the fact that it used to be, maybe 20 years ago, that if you had good insurance, you were pretty much okay. Now, people may have employer provided insurance that's very, very good, but the copays and deductibles, it's easily could be 10,000 a year, and maybe you or I, if we had a unexpected illness, could come up with the 10,000 out of pocket. But someone who's diagnosed with cancer and then they got the 10,000 this year, and it's almost surely going to be 10,000 next year, and that's in addition to what they're paying for their insurance. So it's really a different time and place where there are a lot more individuals that are underinsured in terms of not having enough insurance to really make them whole by the time they get done with their copays and deductibles.
That is correct. And you see a lot of that. And of course, there's a lot of financial assistance out there, not only even through the foundations, but a lot of cancer organizations out there, nonprofit organizations out there, for the specific cancers or just cancer care in general, do have some options out there available for families to apply, patients and families to apply for some additional copay or deductible or medical assistance for those needs. But you have to have specific, they have to be open, and so there's still some loopholes that you have to jump through sometimes, but at least there's some options available that we can assist them with.
Right. And it really is a demonstration of excellence for a center to have a social worker. I mean, there are some for-profit centers out there that don't even take insurance and expect patients to pay out of pocket, and I can guarantee you they don't have social workers that are helping to help find resources in the community. I would imagine that you must have. I'm curious, in this day and age of digital, I can think back in an internship where I had a physical notebook with the phone numbers of every important phone number that I didn't want to lose, and I called that notebook my peripheral brain, because anybody I'd ever want to reach about anything I had in that notebook. As you go from one system to another, I mean, getting to know who are those key people and what is their real phone number that I can actually reach them. How do you keep all of these places you might want to turn for financial support or transportation support or lodging support or nutrition, food support?
I have a variety of folders based on food, transportation, financial insecurity, housing. I mean, I have files upon files, and usually they're on a flash drive, or I have them on, on a, currently it's online right now on a SharePoint. But every place that I go and every new item that I learn, I just add it to whatever folder or SharePoint that I have, because every so often you're going to have a new person that's in that position or a new resource that you add to that, and so you just continue to compile. So it is beyond pages long of who assists with that, or what website you're going to obtain it, or which department I need to call for which financial assistance I need. And so it is very, very long, probably several notebooks worth, I'm sure, if I was to write it all down that way. So yeah, it's a lot of resources to keep in mind, or several bookmarks on my Internet Explorer.
And are you knowledgeable about how to connect individuals who might be Medicaid eligible but had never filled out the paperwork? Is that a fairly straightforward thing that social workers can help patients do, figure out, number one, based on their place of residence and income level, whether they're eligible for what we call the Medicaid expansion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so really almost all of it is based on income, how many you have in your household. And so ultimately there's you can print off a kind of a, I guess you could say, a guide online that says, okay, this is what your income level is. This is kind of how many you have in your household, and then base it off of where you're at every month. And then your resource level to determine whether or not you're eligible for straight Medicaid. And then after that, you basically, if they're not eligible, then you can send them to the Affordable Care Act to apply beyond that. There's several different resources. You can send them just to straight the affordablecareact.gov, or I don't know if it's affordablecareact.gov, but there's a resource that I do have that you can send them to. Otherwise, there's a couple other places here at Mercy, financial counselors. But as far as my first step would be to sit down and ask them, are you Medicaid eligible? If you are straight Medicaid, then I would help them fill out the application. If they're not, then there's a next step, which would be the Affordable Care Act. And then that is obviously based on their income. Yep.
Right. And I know that some of them are just like Medicare. There's certain, and the healthcare.gov, there's certain times of the year where you're supposed to get signed up. What if you miss that and now you've just been diagnosed with a catastrophic cancer? Does that count as a life event that may allow you to get in even if you miss the deadline?
Good question. There are several different can't think of the word right now, but there are several different life events that can allow you to become eligible. I don't know if a cancer diagnosis is one of them, but I know, like, getting married, divorced, change of, like, I think it's out of state. There's a couple different things, but I don't think an actual diagnosis of cancer is one. But I've had a few situations where we've had situations like this come up, and we've had people that have had to wait for certain reasons, at least until October, to determine it. So, but I know that there might be a couple. I know, like, ALS is a specific diagnosis, but I don't know about a terminal diagnosis. So I'd have to check into that. Yep.
Okay. Maybe share with us some of your successes that you've had at the cancer center, or maybe just give us a little bit of a feel for the types of patients that you have worked with in both buckets, if you will, those with the pragmatic connecting patients to resources, and maybe those situations where you've done some counseling.
Good question. I'll use a couple from here already. I've met with a couple, one in particular, stage 4 cancer, that has really been struggling with not only grief related to loss of what once was, right, before cancer, not only who she was before her body, who she was as far as career, and the effects of the treatment that's had on her now, the grief that she's experiencing as far as anticipatory grief, because she does know that her cancer is terminal. And so now she's beginning to process what life is going to look like as she continues to decline, and is concerned and has that fear of, how is my family going to survive without me? And so we are really starting to process what that looks like for her and her family, and some of those conversations she's going to have with them moving forward, and some of the to-do lists that she wants to do moving forward. I've got a couple of resources for her in relation to some tribute videos and things that she wants to complete for her children. That is one wish that she wants to do, and so that's one thing that she really is just desiring to do. So I will say that's one really thing that I feel has gone really, really well, is getting her to open up and to be able to acknowledge some of these big big things for her, I guess I could say, some
Right.
big changes out of her life that she's starting to acknowledge.
And Kelli, a patient like that, and the issues you're working on, how frequently would you meet with a patient like that one-on-one?
I would say, at least for me, I think that's typically like a weekly patient, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, depending on how significant of grief they're experiencing, if they have any other support. Um, I oftentimes look to the patient and say, how often do you feel like you need it? Not only do I, as a professional, feel like it's important to acknowledge that, but I also look to the patient and say, how often do you need me to? Because sometimes they don't feel like they have that support, and they can't always look to their family or their friends. Sometimes they just need that other person to listen to them. And sometimes that's me, and I'm more than willing to do as often as I need to be their support. And so right now I have several of those people that I'm meeting weekly with, just to help them open up and process some of those hard feelings.
Yeah. And we're all engaged in lifelong learning. And one of the things I would ask you, because the case where you mentioned and that this patient wanted to kind of create a legacy, a video legacy, and we talked about different resources that we have in the cancer community. So my question for you, and this isn't to put you on the spot, but the 3 different resources we came up with, were you familiar with those resources before?
I was only familiar with one of them, which was fantastic. The one I was familiar with, I'd worked with her previously, and the other 2 I was not. And so, I think that's the one thing that's so great about being in this community, is that there's so many. Working as a team is so wonderful, and there's so many people in the oncology department that have worked in this field for so long that they know a lot of these things. And so it's okay to ask for some help, and okay to ask for resources, and just to ask for different things. And so opening options for what is available for all of our patients is great. And as you say, lifelong learning, right? I don't know everything, and you don't know everything. And so we can help each other along the way to better help our patients.
Right. And as it turns out, these 3 organizations have all been guests of mine on our video podcast. So if anyone watching this show knows of someone who wants to create their life story to leave behind, we do have 3 resources. One is a social worker, Liz Weinstein, who actually will sit down and write up your story and make a book to pass on to your family. Another is a not-for-profit organization called Amadora that will videotape you giving your messages to others. And then there's one other for-profit video company that would come out to your house and make a high-end video. So those services do exist, and some of them are not for profit and are done without any charge to the patient. So a nice resource for those patients who are already thinking about wanting to leave a legacy more than just the pictures or a journal that they may have written.
Mm-hmm.
Back to you, Kelli. What are maybe some examples of patients and families you've worked with more on the practical side of connecting them to resources, whether they be financial, food, housing, transportation, etc.?
I'm trying to think if there's any. I mean, I've had a number of them. I don't think there's been anything here recently. I'll use one here actually. Female struggling with newly diagnosed brain cancer, doesn't have insurance, and so currently struggling with not only insurance needs, but not working because she has active brain cancer, and so she's not able to drive, is affecting her ability to work. She has 2 young children in the home. And so they're unable to afford food, utility assistance, the typical things you would think of that most people need to function on a daily basis. And so after a period of time, was able to get her in here and fill out a Medicaid application and SNAP benefits, which for those that don't know, SNAP is the financial assistance for food. And so we filled out both of those applications and submitted both of those, and also provided her with information on transportation options as well as food pantries, and then our Capital City food box, which comes every month, that we are able to have a partnership with. And her application is currently pending, but I did find out today, when I talked with her on the phone, she does have an interview with SNAP tomorrow, so hopefully she'll get those benefits. But she was able to secure some food, some transportation, and a food box. And so just another example of, just being available to patients and figuring out what their needs are and securing those things for them so that their needs can be met.
Kelli, what brings you the most joy in your job?
Really meeting patients one-on-one, and hearing their story, and not every story comes with joy overall, right? There comes sadness and despair and anger, but really listening to them and working through whatever emotion they might be experiencing, wherever they're at in their journey, and helping them through all of that with them, so that wherever they might be, I am able to help them find joy through their journey, and that they're able to find success wherever that might be, and hope.
Yeah. Helping other people is a very joyful experience.
Yeah. Yep.
We're going to open it up to questions here. We've got a live studio audience. And then if you are one of the folks that are watching us live streaming, there's a comment section that you can put your question in. And we'll start here. Gary.
I have a question about, you talked about getting assistance for Medicaid. How about for disability? Do you have resources to be able to make contact for those?
Whoop, just a second, Kelli. We've lost your audio for a second. Go ahead.
There you go. Yes, I do. We actually have, I actually have a full packet here printed out for patients. And really, there's 3 different ways you can apply. You can apply either in person, you can apply on phone, or you can apply online. And so the packet that I have that I hand out to patients usually, on that first page, it tells you where you can apply, and it tells you what all you need, and the questions that they typically ask, and what documents that you might need when you go through the application process. So it's pretty straightforward. Helps the patients know kind of what to expect.
And Kelly, are you referring to SSDI?
That is correct.
Yep. And so some patients that are employed might have an employer that provides short-term disability. They may provide long-term disability. And then ultimately, if those have run out, or you may be eligible for the Social Security disability. And one thing that I think all patients should know is individuals who have stage 4 incurable cancer, that is a fairly straightforward process to getting SSDI. So now some patients with incurable cancer may want to continue to work because it provides them such great joy. And if they've got an employer that is flexible, even somebody with incurable cancer may continue to work, enjoy their work, continue to get a salary that would be greater than SSDI. But for those individuals who truly become unable to work because of the symptoms of their incurable cancer, that's a pretty fast track to getting SSDI.
That is correct. I think the most difficult thing is that once you're approved for SSDI, a lot of people don't know you have to be on it for 20. You have to be considered disabled for 24 months before you're eligible for Medicare. And so that's another thing a lot of people get concerned about is, well, if I don't have insurance, then what? Because even though you're considered disabled, you then don't have insurance for 24 months. And so that's somewhat of a big concern for people that do apply for SSDI.
Other questions?
Yes.
Here we go.
This
Kevin?
first is a comment. My girlfriend works as a school social worker for 40 years. And now we travel a lot. What always amazes me when she meets a stranger, in a few minutes, the amount of information this stranger is willing to give her about themselves, just without even asking questions. Do you find that's common among social workers, that just run into people are willing or want to give them information or tell them so much about themselves?
That other people are willing to give us information about themselves? Yeah. Yes, that is very true. I think we just radiate social work off of us, and people just want to tell us everything and anything.
Well, I always think you're always non-threatening. It's a non-threatening personality.
Yes.
And people in general want to tell you something.
Yes, I think that's pretty accurate.
Okay.
Kelly, on the other hand, you get patients who don't want to share their financial stuff, and it's more of a pride thing, and don't want help.
Yes, that is very accurate. And I will say, I always preface the question with, I understand this is difficult to talk about. And if you don't want to disclose the information, that is okay too. Just know that I'm here to help you if you want it and when you want it. And if they don't want to disclose it, then I'm more than willing to just give them the information. And they can fill it out if they want, or know that the resources are available if they need it.
Yeah, which does remind me, like one thing, like the school system in Des Moines now, the number of students that meet the financial requirements is so high. They just now say everybody gets lunch. You don't have to fill out forms. You don't have to stand in a special line saying you don't have enough money for lunch. Everybody gets to come and have a free breakfast and free lunch. So it's nice when a system can look at that humanitarian side, because I can only imagine how awkward it is for a fifth grader to have to stand in line, filling out forms, demonstrating that they don't have the financial need, and they get a discount on lunch. Because it is, unfortunately, it's a bit of a stigma to, have to publicly profess that you don't have enough money. Other questions? Yes, Ron. George.
The question I have is, how often have you been stymied on this financial situation? Does it happen very often? If there's a will, is there a way? I mean, have you always been able to find the solution for folks, or have you actually been stonewalled, stopped?
Am I unmuted? I guess I need.
Yep. You're
Okay,
you're
perfect.
on
I could
mute.
tell. I was trying to figure it out. Yeah, I mean, there are situations where you can't find anything. There are a lot of people who are just over that income level, and so there might be people who might not be eligible. And there might be times that there aren't. I will say there's situations where you'll go on every cancer organization, and for some reason they might not have, like, for example, somebody might have lung cancer or something like that, and the organizations might not have any current openings of lung cancer. But there are some organizations out there that there's foundations available, there are gas cards, there's certain things out there that are options, but there are occasional times where there might just not be some options available depending on the circumstance. So you can't, sometimes, as much as you want to help, sometimes there aren't always necessarily options available. So it just kind of depends.
Other questions? George, do we have any online questions? So over the course of your work experience, let me ask a little bit about VA, because individuals who are eligible for total VA care, it's kind of a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, like a universal health care if you're eligible. Now, I'm sure there's a lot at the front end about, are you truly eligible for VA health care, or were you in the service but you didn't retire, or that you didn't have disability associated with it, so you're not entitled to everything. But do you find that those individuals who have been deemed totally eligible for health care through the VA, is that a big sense of relief to them, that they have a sense of relief that maybe those in the private world who live year to year not knowing what their insurance company is going to be, what the copays and deductibles, which medications are going to be covered or not? Do you sense a sense of calm for those individuals that are totally within the VA system?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that's very accurate. Just to kind of be transparent about how that works. So a lot of it is based on your rating disability. So you kind of go through a rating system of what percentage of disability do you have related to your service connection. So, you have 100%, some people might only be 10%, and also based on your income. So depending on what percentage of disability you are, whatever level of income you are, is going to depend on how much you have as far as your health care, how much free healthcare you have, or if you have copays or anything like that. So, but I will say, for the people who have free healthcare, free extended care and rehab, dental, vision, you name it, they are extremely happy with that they don't have to worry about any out-of-pocket expenses. I will say, I did hospice there for a long time, and the biggest concern they had was when I'd have to explain to them, okay, well, your medications are going to be covered by hospice now and not by the VA, because it's double dipping if you don't. And they didn't understand what that meant, because, like, well, does that mean that I'm going to have to pay for my medicine now? Because the VA always covered the medicine. And so, no, it doesn't. It just means a different, somebody else was paying for it instead. So they would almost get scared to find out that it's not going to be coming from the VA anymore, because they were so used to the VA covering everything. Same thing was, for some reason, if the VA didn't have the specialty provider available and they had to go to the care in the community for the specialty provider, they would almost get nervous. Was the VA not going to pay for it? No, the VA is going to cover it. We just don't offer it. And so I will say very much so that veterans are very much appreciative of those services being covered.
And with the number of younger veterans, based on Afghanistan and Iraq and all of that. Do you see that the VA that you were at, has it been able to scale up to be able to accommodate all of the veterans that we have?
Mhm. Good question. I mean, I would say as far as the services that I was involved in, absolutely. I think there's still specialty providers that that they were outsourcing for the most part. From a mental health perspective, I think always, they were doing the best that they can. I certainly think that from a mental health perspective, we all can do better to manage those. But, I think from, a primary care standpoint, I think they were doing everything they could to manage the number of veterans that are, gradually increasing for sure. But RVA is, I would say good size, but not as large as many of the other ones. And so, from my understanding, I feel like they did a fairly good job from what I could see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Any other questions for Kelli? Well, Kelli, this has been wonderful. And I know you were feeling a little under the weather today, so I really appreciate you staying late and being our guest.
Absolutely.
So, Kelli Bredehoeft, who is a medical social worker, Master of Social Work at the Mercy One Richard Deming Cancer Center. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks you all for joining.
And if any one of you that is watching this knows someone that would benefit by watching it again, this program will be available on demand at the Mercy One Cancer Center website and the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining us. Please join us again next week.